Hey guys, Koichi here, and the most acclaimed animation studio in the 2000s has reached a milestone of 25 movies. So I'll be doing a worst to best for all the Pixar films. They created legends, childhoods, morals, creativity, and a new norm for feature animation. Well, that norm is now 27 years old. Here is every Pixar movie ranked.
Bottom.
Of course, since this is a ranking, I'll start off with the worst. Keep in mind that not all movies in the bottom 5 are bad. This is Pixar we're talking about, so the movies after 24 are mediocre at best. But that number and 25, in the other hand, are disgraces to the studio by failing their usual demographic, which is a universal audience. The target audience for these two movies felt very specific and very narrow. If you are in that target audience and you enjoy them, good for you. But to anyone outside of that target audience, especially me, these ones felt exhausting. I am, of course, talking about 2011's Cars 2 and 2020's Onward. The former doesn't have the nostalgic feel of the other two movies in the trilogy, but rather, why am I watching this crap? There are movies specifically made for kids that still have aspects for teens and adults to enjoy, like Curious George and Paw Patrol the movie for instance. That does not apply to Cars 2 whatsoever. There's nothing to laugh at, no morals to gain, no characters to root for, and nothing to keep those teens and adults from straight up cringing the whole way through. The animation may be decent, and the action had good ideas, but that's not enough to stop the movie from making anyone over 10 suffer. I guess some of you didn't hear me talk about Onward in my top 5 worst animated films of 2020, so I'll talk about it again without repeating myself. As an animation reviewer, I consider Onward as one of the most overrated animated films of the new decade, for having a generic story that copies Detective Pikachu, a world that is too similar to Ever After High for my liking, characters that are lacking in materials despite strong performances, and humor that is painfully unfunny. The heart would have been in the right place, since it is one of those personal stories from their respective director, if it weren't dependent in using plot cliches that have been beaten to death. Now here's the mediocre movies in the bottom 5. I like to warn you that the first one may not be popular with most viewers, but bear with me. Incredibles 2 sucks. I'm sorry, but this does not stick the landing as the most demanded animated sequel of all time. This is one of those sequels that literally copies the predecessor, but makes a good chunk of it worse. Aside from the nicely polished animation, the creative action and a few good jokes, the follow-up leaves the flaws of the 2004 movie to sour more, such as the lack of character arcs, the slow pacing, and the poor balance between the action and the character dynamics. Plus, they've up Violet big time by having her be this unlikable and generic, and about the animation being nicely polished. The rendering is far stronger than what you see in the original, but the new supers look less like they belong in the Incredibles universe, and more like they belong in Fortnite or Skylanders. Then there's Brave, which is a major disappointment for the year it came out. In the same year, where we got Wreck-It Ralph, Rise of the Guardians, Paranorman, and Pirates Band of Misfits, you'd think that Pixar would have entered that ring. Nope. No, they didn't. This felt like the blandest Disney princess movie ever created. As Maui says it best, she disobeys her parents to go on an adventure with an animal sidekick to see the world, and she wears a dress. Yes, there's a few different aspects like the archery and the mother-daughter dynamic, but there's not much of the archery, and the mother-daughter dynamic felt toxic due to how unlikable these characters are. Not even the beautiful animation and authentic Scottish score can shoot an arrow at this tricky target. Lastly, you got The Good Dinosaur. I did enjoy this at first, when I saw it in theaters, but as time went on, this is also a major disappointment. It does have some gorgeous backgrounds, nice voice acting, and some genuine moments with Orlo and Spot, but it's also painfully similar to The Land Before Time in most areas, and has weak character design, bland side characters, an unnecessary twist villain, and some bare-bones humor. Speaking of twist villains, that's also a major problem with Incredibles 2. These movies are not that bad on their own, but as Pixar films, they can bite these nuts, for all I care.